Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're turning our attention to the final, really frantic year of the Great War.
That's right.
We're focusing on a German fighter unit, Jagdstaffel 65, or Jasta 65, existed for less than a year.
Barely 12 months, yeah.
But somehow managed to pack in just an incredible amount of intense combat, high casualty rates, and, well, some truly iconic aviation artwork.
It really is an amazing snapshot of that late war attrition. If you want to understand the grinding reality of WWI aviation in 1918, Jasta 65 is almost the perfect case study.
So our mission today, our deep dive, is to kind of extract the story of this late starting squadron.
Exactly. How they were formed,
Yeah.
how they got thrown immediately into the worst of the fighting against French and American forces, and importantly, why their colorful, sometimes really satirical planes are still so memorable today.
Okay, let's unpack this timeline then. They were officially formed January 23rd, 1918.
Yeah, very late in the game. Like the Red Baron was long gone by then.
Right. But within just 2 weeks, they were operational, deployed February 4th.
And immediately attached to the FIME, right into the thick of it in the Verdun-Lorraine sector.
That sector, definitely not a gentle introduction to the front line.
No way. It was constant hard fighting. And what's fascinating when you look at the sources is just how kinetic their existence was. They were always moving.
Constantly shifting airfields, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
From Stenay, then Mars-la-Tour, then Tichamont, always chasing that fluid front line. They really never had time to settle in anywhere.
Wow. Despite all that motion, that constant upheaval, and starting so late, they still racked up, 34 official aerial victories?
34 confirmed kills before the armistice in less than 10 months of operations.
That speaks volumes about their competence, doesn't it?
Okay.
Especially under that kind of pressure. But okay, to achieve that, they needed decent planes. What were they actually flying when they first arrived?
Well, they started with the standard German fighters available then. Typically the Albatros Diva, maybe some false DIC biplanes too.
Okay, standard workhorses.
Right. But we have this really specific bit of intel almost right away. March 5th, 1918. An Albatros Diva flown by a Gerfreiter. That's like a corporal named Lothman.
Yeah.
It was captured completely intact by the French.
Oh, wow. Okay, why is capturing one specific plane like that such a big deal for the Allies? It's just one aircraft, isn't it?
Well, yes and no. An intact capture gives the enemy basically everything. You get the airframe, sure, but also engine performance data, any structural weaknesses, how the guns are mounted, maybe even radio gear details.
Ah, okay, so it's like getting the blueprints.
Pretty much. For the French, getting a pristine late model Albatros like that one from Jasta 65 was gold. Vital intelligence for adjusting their own tactics, maybe even influencing their aircraft designs.
That's a tough lesson for Jasta 65 to learn just weeks into their deployment.
Definitely a costly mistake early on. But the real shift in air power, the plane everyone thinks of from this era, is the Fokker DVET. Did Jasta 65 get those?
Ah, yes, the legendary Fokker.
They did, crucially. By the summer of 1918, Jasta 65 had re-equipped with the much superior Fokker DVF.
That must have made a difference.
Absolutely. And here's a little technical detail that actually matters. They often use the OEW built variant.
OEW? What's that?
Ostdeutsch Albatros work. See, Fokker couldn't build enough DVIs themselves, so they licensed production out to other companies like Albatros. And those OEW built planes, they were highly regarded. Some pilots even preferred them, found them maybe a bit more robust.
Because they got the best plane available just in time for those huge final battles, giving their pilots a real fighting chance.
Exactly. But their core mission, as a Jagdstaffel, it stayed the same. Pure combat.
Right, a fighter unit. Air superiority, interception, not reconnaissance.
Precisely. They relied completely on other specialized units for recon or artillery spotting.
Yeah.
Their job was fighters and bombers. And when you look at their victory list, you see what that meant in practice.
And in that static trench warfare environment, those big, vulnerable observation balloons were prime targets, weren't they?
Huge targets. They were literally the eyes of the army down below. And Jasta 65 definitely made a point of attacking them. The records show they were credited with destroying 9 enemy observation balloons.
9 balloons? That's significant. Takes a special kind of nerve going after those.
It really does. And interestingly, they quickly produced a specialist in this incredibly dangerous field. Gefreiter Rudolf Kasner, again, an NCO, not an officer, he became a very effective balloon buster.
Really?
Yeah, scored at least 4 balloon victories by March 1918, really soon after the unit formed. Taking on a balloon meant flying right into heavy flak and machine gun fire from the ground crews protecting it. not for the faint of heart.
No kidding. And as 1918 wore on, especially with the American Expeditionary Forces arriving in strength, the variety of enemy planes they faced must have just exploded.
Oh, absolutely. They were fighting, well, everyone. British DH-4 bombers, those fast French SB-8 fighters, and the American Salmson 2A2 reconnaissance planes.
So they were right in the thick of it during major offensives.
Definitely. Jasta 65 was heavily involved during the big St. Mihiel offensive in September 1918, directly opposing the growing strength of the U.S. Air Service.
And there's a specific dogfight from that offensive, isn't there? One that connects Jasta 65 directly to an American aviation name people might recognize.
There is. It's a classic example of these intense personal duels fought miles above the trenches. On September 16, 1918. Vizefeldwebel Joseph Holy. He was a German senior NCO, basically a sergeant major, and one of Jasta 65's top aces.
Okay.
He shot down First Lieutenant Ernest A. Love of the U.S. 213th Aero Squadron. Love was flying a Sped 13.
And Love didn't make it.
No. Sadly, he was mortally wounded in the engagement. It's a tragic story for the American side, of course, but it led to a lasting tribute. An airfield in Arizona, Love Field, was later named in his honor.
Wow. So that single violent encounter over the Western Front created this legacy that still exists today, a century later.
Exactly. It really brings home the personal cost and the unexpected connections from that war.
And Jasta 65, they really fought right up to the very end, didn't they? No easing off as the final days approached.
Absolutely not. They continued flying combat missions through the massive Meuse-Argonne offensive. Their 34th and final credited victory actually occurred just 3 days before the armistice was signed.
3 days before, who scored that kill?
It was Unteroffizier Alfred Better, another NCO, like a corporal, who shot down a French Salmson 2A2 reconnaissance plane on November 8th, 1918. They were fully operational right up until November 11th.
Incredible commitment. Given that short, intense, brutal lifespan, let's talk about the men who led them, the aces, and, well, the price they paid. What was the human cost for Jasta 65?
The attrition was just relentless. In their, 9 or 10 months of active service, they lost 6 pilots killed in action. 2 more were wounded and another 2 were captured.
That's 10 pilots out of action from a single squadron in less than a year. That must have put immense pressure on the command structure.
It did, right from the start. Their founding commander, Lieutenant Helmuth Kontag, he was actually a former cavalry officer.
A cavalryman leading a state-of-the-art fighter squadron. That sounds like a steep learning curve.
It must have been. And tragically, Kontag established the unit in January, got them operational in February, but was killed in combat on March 6th, 1918.
Wow, barely a month after they flew their first mission.
Yeah, it just shows the intensity they faced from day one. But the squadron did find stability under their next commander, Lieutenant Otto Fitzner.
Fitzner, he was the one who saw them through the rest of the war, right, through all those final offensives.
He was. Fitzner took command on March 19th and led them right up until the armistice, even surviving being wounded himself. He was clearly an able leader and an ace too, credited with 9 victories.
So he provided that crucial continuity.
Yes, but the sources really suggest that the backbone of Jasta 65's fighting strength, its real success, lay with its incredibly talented NCO pilots, non-commissioned officers.
We've mentioned a couple already. Kastner the balloon buster, Bader with the last kill, Holy who shot down Altit Love.
Exactly. Vizefeldwebel Joseph Holy, he was actually their top-scoring NCO ace with 7 victories. And interestingly, he scored Jasta 65's very first accredited win back on March 18, 1918, downing a French Durand AR-2.
So he was there from the beginning of their scoring run. Anyone else stand out?
Well, there was Lieutenant Wilhelm Frickart. He served as Fitzner's deputy commander, his right-hand man. Frickart's story is pretty remarkable.
How so?
He had already achieved ace status earlier in the war as an observer in 2-seaters.
No way. An observer ace?
Yeah. And then he successfully retrained as a fighter pilot, joined Jasta 65, and added 4 more kills flying fighters, bringing his total to 12 victories overall.
From observer to fighter ace, that takes some serious skill and adaptability.
It really does.
Yeah.
So you had this dynamic mix. Experienced pilots like Frickart, capable officers like Fitzner leading from the front, and these aggressive, highly successful NCOs like Holy, Bader, and Kastner carrying a lot of the combat load.
That blend seems to define their whole character, their esprit de corps, and we see that reflected not just in the combat record, but also, famously, in how they decorated their aircraft.
Absolutely. The intense pressure of late war flying didn't seem to crush their spirit. If anything, it fueled this desire for individuality and unit distinction.
Okay, let's shift gears then from the grit of combat to this incredible visual legacy, because this is where Justice 65 really stands out, isn't it? They had a unit marking that was pretty hard to miss.
Oh, definitely. They adopted a very clear, distinctive tricolor scheme, mainly on their Fokker DVIs, which reflected their Prussian origins.
Prussian colors, what did that look like?
You'd see a deep, rich red painted on the forward fuselage and the engine cowling. Then the rear fuselage section would be painted Prussian blue, and finally the entire empennage, that's the tail fin and rudder, was painted stark white.
Red, blue, and white. Okay, that would definitely stand out in a swirling dogfight.
Made their Fokkers highly recognizable. But the personal marking that has really cemented their fame belongs to Oofs. Alfred Bader, the pilot who scored their very last kill. His plane featured the famous Seven Swabians.
Right, the Seven Swabians. This is one of the most elaborate pieces of nose art, or maybe fuselage art, in the entire war.
It really is. Bader's Fokker DD7, we even know the serial number, OEW 464918, was painted with this huge, quite sophisticated cartoon right along the side. It depicted a scene from a well-known German folktale, Die Sieben Schwaben.
Okay, refresh my memory. What's the story of the Seven Swabians? It sounds like more than just a simple lucky charm or mascot.
Oh, it's pure satire. The folktale is about these 7 famously foolish travelers from the Swabia region of Germany. They set out looking for adventure, all armed with a single massive spear they carry together.
Okay, 7 guys, 1 spear. Got it.
Right. And they encounter this completely harmless hare, a rabbit rustling in a bush. But they mistake it for some terrifying monster, panic completely, and either charge it foolishly or flee in terror, depending on the version of the story. Bader had this whole scene painted across his fuselage.
Wait, so he's flying into deadly combat in one of the best fighter planes of the war, painted with a cartoon, mocking foolishness, mocking a group of idiots mistaking a rabbit for a monster.
Exactly. Think about the context. Late 1918, Germany is losing. The war feels increasingly pointless and absurd to many on the front lines.
So what does that artwork tell us? What was Bader saying?
It's likely dark humor, maybe even a kind of profound anti-war commentary. Bader himself was a Swabian, so he knew the story and its connotations intimately. Painting this on his plane could have been his way of poking fun at the perceived foolishness of the whole situation, maybe the high command, the endless war effort, all while still flying his missions and doing his duty.
That's fascinating. It really challenges that stereotype of the stoic, humorless German ace, doesn't it? Injecting satire right onto the fuselage.
It absolutely does. It suggests a much more complex mindset among these pilots facing the end.
So that's their incredible artistic statement. But Jasta 65 also left us something else, didn't they? A very literal, very tangible link to their story that you can actually go and see today.
That's right. The ultimate artifact, really. Lieutenant Heinz Freiherr von Bulli-Marcane, another Jasta 65 pilot, he flew a Fokker DV8 marked with U-10.
Okay.
On November 9th, 1918. Now think about this. That's just 2 days, 48 hours before the armistice finally went into effect.
Yeah, the war is basically over.
He flew his Fokker DV8 in apparently pristine condition, landed it at a U.S. airfield near Verdun, and simply surrendered himself and the aircraft.
Just landed and gave up. Handed over one of the best fighting machines of the war 2 days before the end.
He did. Just decided his war was over. The Americans, of course, immediately recognized the intelligence value of getting their hands on an undamaged late-model Fokker DV.
I bet they did.
So the plane was carefully preserved, shipped back to the United States for evaluation, and incredibly, it survived. Today, that very Jasta 65 Fokker D7 marked U-10 is preserved and on display at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C.
You can actually go and see a Jasta 65 Fokker. Amazing.
An incredible historical survivor.
So we have this unit, Jasta 65, formed late, thrown into the furnace, fought with incredible skill and tenacity, racked up 34 victories against the odds. But their story, especially at the very end, seems framed by these 2 really different decisions made by their own pilots.
It's a stark contrast, isn't it? If you look at that final week of the war for Jasta 65, it really poses an interesting question for you, the listener, to think about.
How so?
Well, on one hand, you have Unteroffizier Alfred Bader. He scores the unit's final victory on November 8th. His aircraft is decorated with this elaborate, dark, satirical folktale, essentially poking fun at the absurdity and foolishness of the whole war effort, even as he's still fighting it.
Right, the 7 Swabians. Humor as commentary.
Exactly. Then, just 24 to 48 hours later, you have Lieutenant von Bulli-Marcane. He makes this intensely pragmatic, arguably life-saving choice.
Yeah.
Takes his pristine, top-of-the-line Fokker D7, flies it across the lines, and just surrenders. hands it over.
Aggressive fighting spirit and biting satire right next to pragmatic resignation.
Precisely. So, what does this contrast tell us? What does the juxtaposition of Bader's satirical defiance and Bouley Marconet's pragmatic surrender reveal about the complicated, maybe even fractured mindset of these German pilots fighting in the final desperate hours and days of World War I? It's a fascinating snapshot, isn't it? A unit caught right between loyalty to duty, a sense of the absurd, and the stark, unavoidable reality of imminent collapse. Something to ponder.